And welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing live show number 387. Apologies for the slow startup today. It turned out that just at this time, we like to say everything's back to normal in Southwest Florida, but unfortunately it's not. We still see stuff on the side of the road and we still get internet outages, which apparently happened at the exact right time for me this morning. So for that reason, a little delay for us. Plus also, beginning of the year, you always have to reset your connections to revalidation of accounts and stuff. Of course, it has to happen when you're in a rush, right? So my apologies for all those that were on time for our show and I wasn't. I'll hopefully make up for that very quickly for that. First off, a very happy New Year, belated as it may be, being that it's the 6th of January, but it was our first opportunity to wish everyone a very happy New Year. Hopefully the transition from last year to this year was a pleasant one. I know for me and what all the things that happened last year, you always have things that you look back on and say, man, hope that never happens again and so forth. But there's a lot of good things that happened in 22 as well. And I don't want to always look at it as like, oh, that was a bad year. Or it was it was a challenging year. Obviously, for where I'm at in Southwest Florida, we had Hurricane Ian come through, and then Nicole in the North Florida has been beaten up pretty bad. But there's always optimism as to how things come from it. And so many other things go on in people's lives that we don't often know because we're not individually tied to everybody in the universe. But for our friends and our acquaintances and so forth, we try to keep up to date with everything that's going on for everyone. And saddened that we lose some people. That day will come for all of us. But it is a transition from one year to the next. 23 is going to be hopefully, as always, optimistic as we like to be. I know that a lot of the forecasts start every year like that, where it's like, yes, we're going to do this, and this percentage growth over, and then about halfway through the year, or actually a quarter through the year, we begin to get the reality check of realignments and so forth. Now, from our live show last week, which was my prognostication show, which was all of last year, now it's New Year, I did talk about the things that would be of interest to us potentially this year, of things that I think that will happen this year. And of course, some of that is, of course, the transitions as to which channels we use and how valuable they are. And I speak directly to Facebook about that and Twitter, obviously. TikTok, I did, in optimism, talk about the incredibly high value associated with what I think OTT advertising will be, which is smart TV advertising. The technology is becoming more and more available for everyone. And then when I mean more and more available, I mean more and more affordable. We just recently tied up together a relationship with Roku as a distributor for them. And not for their products or hardware, but actually the marketing part of it for hospitality. We're the only hospitality company right now that's doing OTT advertisement with that level of relationship. So pretty stoked about that. It brings to the table quite a few options that are amazingly dynamic. But that's not the point of our conversation today, is it? I'm just excited about it. It was just last week's conversation going into this week and this week's conversation in continuance. I want to talk a little bit about what our topic today is. It's not a popular thing. And let me explain by this. So let me first tell you what the topic is. The topic today is the how and why of New Year's benchmarking. So what is benchmarking? Benchmarking is basically putting a stick in the sand. I talked to a friend who, for a variety of reasons, is moderating their health. We all have our New Year's resolutions and so forth. But yet they refuse to have a scale in their house. They measured according to their interaction with their clothing. I empathize with that deeply. Clothes that didn't fit that do. Belts that used to be one notch go to the next notch, or vice versa. There's ways to say, I think that I'm doing well, that are measured beyond just the numerics of weight. But the idea that you're not going to measure is a little bit like the proverbial ostrich with the head in the sand. Not that they actually even do that. And that is ignoring the data that's available to understand beginnings and ends or transitions from and tos. You need measurement, quantifiable measurement. You can't just say it seems warmer today than yesterday. You would prefer to think that you look at a thermostat, and yesterday thermostat was X, today it's Y, and the difference is the difference that you're now acknowledging. It avoids a lot of what we deal with in the sense of ambiguity of opinion. Gosh knows our society now is flooded with individualism and opinion. And it is fed to the belief of what perceived truth there is, because they think that enough people surround them that agree with them, then therefore it must be a truth, when in fact it's nothing more than a consensus in an echo bubble. We see this on and on and on. Unfortunately, I bring this up because today's January 6th. We had a very painful and very scary reminder of that warped perspective 2 years ago in the nation's capital. Unfortunately, we still have people that were directly involved with that are still in seats of power. And You see it on the news even today. They're diatribes. The idea is that we have to measure. We have to start and finish measuring things. And last week's podcast, we talked about some tools that are helpful. And for those of you who don't know, we have an audio podcast in addition to the live show here. We have a podcast that runs, and part of the show is a recap of this show, but we also go through tools and techniques to use those tools. And last week, in preparation for this week, was a discussion of using tools to allow yourself to create benchmarks, reference points. There's a love and hate about benchmarks. There is the benchmarks that you know you're going to exceed. So therefore, you're more than willing to measure because you know you're going to make a bigger number later or a better number later, and that you will get acknowledged for that success. And then there's the benchmarks that you wish to avoid. You know that where you're at right now is going to be better than you are in the future. So you don't want that direct correlation to show that you declined in performance or declined in value. And so you say better not to measure it. That way I can allude to, well, it was kind of like, it wasn't as bad as we thought it was, or without the measurement, there's not a quantifiable numeric way of referring to good or bad indicators. It's like a needle, up and down. Doesn't necessarily mean up is better. Okay. Oftentimes, especially with the metrics we use in advertisement and digital marketing, numbers going up aren't necessarily the value that you want. They're actually an indication of dilution of value. And I often explain that when I create dashboards for our clients, and you have the spaghetti charts that are running off, and they're like, they think green is good, red is bad, up is good, down is bad. And it's like, no, actually, this is just tracking a number. And a number going up doesn't mean that it's good. A number going up could be bad. So defining what these numbers mean only comes from the fact of having benchmarks, reference points to refer to say that it was here, now it is here. And that difference is explained this way, good or bad. Okay. The New Year's is a symbolic but also realistic time to create benchmarks. Benchmarks are critical based on physicality. Physicality is not even a word. The beginning of the year stuff. We have budgets based on the fiscal years. Our 2023 budget started 5 days ago. Our reports for end of the month to the next month, December to January, that's a monthly. Then you had a quarterly, fourth quarter to first quarter. Then you had annual, 22 to 23. It's a very large pivot point that we just are going through right now at the beginning of this year. What better time than now to take a snapshot, a slice, a benchmark as to what we are doing. Now, what does that mean for us in the sense of marketing? Well, it's about indicators as to what's going on now compared to when we look at it again later. Some of the easy benchmarks, and we discussed this from the podcast last week because of the tools we were talking about, are more SEO and operational technologies. Okay. What is our performance of our website? Okay. Do we have technical issues with our website? Is there broken things in our website? Is our website functioning the way it's designed at its full efficiency? And regardless of whether it's technology-wise running at full efficiency, is it performing at the levels that we built it for? Low expectations require low standards. From that, what do we have in plans? Because we have budgets for 2023, we have expectations, we have forecasts, we have SWOT analysis and so forth for 2023. What of this year measures against what we're currently doing with our website to know that it will perform at the levels we need it to? AKA, do we have all the content pages we need? AKA, do we have the different ad campaign landing pages that we need? Do we have that strategy in place already? Do we know that we should already have had a Valentine's page built for whatever offer we're going to be doing for Valentine's and or for spring break and or for spring travel and or for corporate travel? Are they built already? Are they in the process of being? Where are they in the timeline? That benchmarking goes just beyond not just a report of current status, as it is a measure of where we are at in the timelines of everything that we have in progress. So it's not a static perspective for everything, as it is a slice, a snapshot at a moment of time. This is a great moment of time to do benchmarks. Beyond the technical of your website should be the performance of your website. The actual traffics and conversions and click-throughs and funnels and usages. Is there dead ends? Is there things that aren't producing? Are the things that the conversion rates are lower than they were anticipated? Again, performance slice of time. Here we are, beginning of 2023. This is what our website is doing right now. This is what our website is performing. That question then gets expanded into your competitive set. What, first off, evaluation, is my competitive set still my best choice of competitive sets? Am I choosing for the right reasons who I'm comparing myself to? Great time to do this beginning of the year. Are we still measuring against the right people? And it's a mixture of things. There's a mixture of our in market competition and our exterior market competition. When I say that, I mean OTAs and outside third parties that are trying to sell into your market, even though they don't actually reside in your market. Okay. So your online competition, your symbiotic markets, we've talked about this on the live show, is like markets that go for the same demographics that your market goes for, but they don't offer the same things. And I gave the example of Key West versus Vail, Colorado. Same demographics, different venues. How do you compare against that? It's really to stop back and see, where are we right now today, X day, January 2023. And pardon for the cough, I'm still getting through a bit of a sinus infection thing going on. And so because of that, you get this moment perspective snapshot. You have yourself and your competitors. Evaluation versus the competitors are still accurate, which you would hope by now it's not a late minute thought that you're having. You actually already evaluated this when you went through your budgeting process. But just to say, now that we're into actuals and not forecasts, are we still measuring correctly? The third is, how do you and they compare? Are your performance metrics, where's your slice of time in comparison to how well you're performing for your keywords, for your presence and authority and value proposition compared to them? And are the weaknesses that you perceived when you first did your SWOT analysis back August and September still valid? Has anything changed since you first thought that 2023 was going to start a certain way? Sorry, coffee helps the throat. So it's a chance for you to pause. Now, last week we talked about the anticipation of what Tuesday this week was going to be, which is just a few days ago. And I made a comment about that because it was a unique time to start a year. With New Year's landing on Sunday, obviously work wasn't going to happen on Sunday. Because of the official holiday on Monday, you weren't really going to do a normal work day. For those eager beavers that were looking to kind of get ahead of the pile that was accumulating at the beginning of the year, and we had that discussion. Everybody knows what we mean by that. The monthly transition, the quarterly transition, annual transition, all the buildups of saying wait until after the holidays before we get to it, wait until next year when the budget's in place to do it. All that pile that gets built up really landed on a Tuesday. And it's overwhelming because you know you're already walking into way more work than you'll be able to accomplish. And it's a matter of triage, prioritization. What is the most critical thing? And usually the thing that gets people's attention the most when they're looking at a pile of things to do is what is the most dangerous thing from their perspective, whether it affects them or whether it affects their business. What's the most dangerous thing? What broke or what is broken that needs an immediate attention? From there, it goes to what needs attention so it doesn't break. From there, it goes to before, if we do this before it doesn't break, what's the most valuable thing we can do for what we need done? And then from there, it goes even deeper into what's the most expensive thing that can be less expensive if we did it now compared to later. There's a progression that you approach a lot of your projects with and for. For that reason, Tuesdays are very occupied. You may have some things scheduled, mostly internally, but you kind of leave it open because you know you're walking into an unknown quantity on Tuesday. Sorry. So now it's Friday. We went through the 4 days of the first part of the year. The last thing on your mind was, gee, let me sit back and ponder the universe and see where we are and do snapshots and benchmarking. Sadly, though, in the time from Tuesday to today, the influence of what you've done has changed how you started the year. In even just these few days of not evaluating and benchmarking where you're at, you've already influenced stuff into 2023 because you're in 2023 with the things that you were tackling for the first 4 days. I'm not saying that benchmarking has to be pristine. On the contrary, it has to just be done. Doing benchmarking is taking the time to say, I'm handling these things, but let's just take the moment to see where we are so that we can know in the future when we look at these things again, what has changed. And it's not about quantifying it, what did we influence or what did we affect or what we did or didn't do. It's about what changed. Because a lot of times things that influence our businesses are not directly related to what we can control. And for that reason, just benchmarking allows us to see the ebb and flow of the impact on our business for the things that are around us. I give you a prime example of that is COVID lockdown from 2020. It was not a controllable circumstance for all of us. We were probably very productive. We had great forecasts. We had great anticipation as to our ADRs, and we already had a lot of early bookings for compression, so forth and so on. And then through no control of ours, it got shut off. And that all went away. I'm not saying to live every day with a Damocles' sword over your head, but I am saying that you should always have an idea of where you are, what your status is, so that should it change as dramatically as we have examples of from 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, that you have a perspective of what you need to do beyond the reaction of what's being done. I know it sounds kind of a weird, fuzzy way of saying it, but if you know how your website is performing, if you know how your campaigns are structured, if you know how your objective goals are in your communications with social media, you know what channels are contributing, you know where you're deriving your business from, you knowing what you're doing to drive that business, and then large circumstances change. You have a sense of what you can react to better because you have a presence about you as to knowing where you are now. Metaphorically, it's like being dropped in the middle of a map that you don't know where you are. If you know where north is, you know by where the sun's coming up or the sun's coming down, and you know the topography around you, you can at least get a sense of what you need to know about what you need to do next. Doesn't mean you're making all the best decisions. You're making more informed decisions. Benchmarking is about awareness. Benchmarking is about knowledge of presence of where you are for all the things that influence your business. Benchmarking, how to do it, we talked about in the podcast, but it's easy to refer to here as well, is taking your tools and saying, let's store and save our reports from the end of December for our website performance. Let's store and save our production reports from the end of December. Let's benchmark this as the conclusion of 22, beginning of 2023, as to where we are. Let's do an analysis of our website for SEO optimization. Let's do a keyword analysis for optimization of our strategy. Let's do an evaluation of our performance metrics for all of our ads. Let's look at the ones that failed. Let's look at the ones that succeeded. Let's look at the campaigns we derived and created for and where they are running right now for what purpose and value. Let's look at the places we're not. Let's look at our competitors. Look and see what they're doing well and what they're not doing well. From it, then, how do we compare to them? From that, then, how do we create a change in what we thought 4 months ago when we did our budgets to where we are now in January, where we're living the dream? That's benchmarking. That's deciding that this is a time to pause and evaluate from everyone's perspective. I would say it's a welcome meeting to have with everyone. That it's not a meeting to fix a problem. It's not a meeting to have a crisis solution. It's not to witch hunt something. It's to sit down and everyone give their perspective of what they think where we are now is. You might find frustration from your tech team that they feel that the website has been long ignored and is long overdue to have certain changes made. And they should quantify what those changes are, not just blatantly say the website's terrible and then give no reference points. Have a concrete list of things and a planned solution for them and see how far they carried it through. Did they look at what it was going to take to do it? Or did they look at the cost, what it was going to take? Whatever. This is the time to evaluate that. Because as with anything, we'll be plunged into the activities of this year, as we are already, and we'll quickly forget what we know now later. I always look at things and say, wow, I'll remember that. No problem. Day later, week later, whatever. Wait a minute, what do we have for that? And you can't remember it. It's important as it is at the moment. It doesn't stay important as it is later. I've talked about in the show many times about doing journaling and doing a GM's log. This is where those things go. This is the information that you share, that on this date, this is what we're looking at. This is what we had. We did a benchmark of this, this, and this. The data is located here. Keeping that reference, because 6 months from now, and however the world has changed for your business 6 months from now or 3 months from now, let's just say 6, You'd be like, well, did it really change that much from the beginning of the year? Let's go look and go look at what you pulled now as to what was going on now, and also what you anticipated was going to be going on in the future tense, and all the other benchmarking that you did, and say, wow, our website did decline in performance, or it did improve after we did those things. Our campaigns did change from this, or we needed change from this because it really hasn't changed since then. Whatever the revelations are in that reference point, you have a point of reference to evaluate them. And that's truly what benchmarking is. I say this of a broader spectrum of things when it comes to importance of things. I've often said that friendships are like checking accounts. You can make deposits and you take withdrawals, but leaving you alone doesn't build interest. Um, the idea that you get what you invest in and spend time on and keep track of are the things that reap the rewards because of that effort on your part. Keeping track of what you're doing and how you're doing it and what your thought processes were in creating those solutions or making those decisions helps you historically when you go back and relive those moments and say, we had this XYZ problem. We thought the ABC solution was going to be for it. These were the reasons we thought the ABC solution was going to go for it. And now, looking in hindsight, that was this much off because we didn't know that LMN effort was not accounted for. You can't do that without having a benchmark reference. That journal is a benchmark reference. The same too now by saying what is your website performance, what's your ad count performance, take take stock of all of those things and put it into a storage that you can go back and refer to statically. Okay. And yes, there's tons of dynamic reports out there that says, let me compare these dates to those dates. Remembering that the dates and the content of the data that's being compared is the selective data that the reports pull regularly. If you're looking for a data point that isn't in the data reporting process, you have no old and new. Now, with GA4 coming in this year, there is the benefit of being able to go back, and as long as because GA4 tracks everything, even though you may not have had it defined, the data is there, but only is there for 14 months, unless you make other plans by putting storage in BigQuery or whatever. But the data is there. Everything's in GA4. You just now have to go back and ask the right question. Hey, I wasn't tracking this funnel of activity. Can I go back in history and look at that funnel of activity? Yes, you can. With GA4, you can't. Universal Analytics, no. Unless you said, I want to follow these events, I want to follow these goals, you can't go back a lot of times, most of the time, and reconstitute data. I said it with caveats. GA4, you can. GA4, you can say, you know what? I never thought that we should track this correlation. Let me go back as far as I can and see if there was any other indicators earlier on where this would have told us what we need to know now. That's helpful. So remembering that you're referencing history as you go forward so that you can learn from what you were doing to what the result of it was now, okay, is very important. Just like we did the budget last year, August, September, and October, okay, some companies that are still actually trying to grind out their budget for this year while they're in the year. Politics of compromise is we see it in our current U.S. government in the Congress right now that they can't even get a leader organized. There's so much individualism at this point and agendas and so forth. It's insane, and we see this in corporate world as well too. Sandboxes and ownership of places and the non-relinquishing of authority and so forth. It creates all these problems that aren't for the positive of the company; they're for the positive of the individual. Anyway, not to get political with it, but these are the things that show us how we can look back before looking forward on what it will take for us to do benchmarking correctly. And it's going to be hit and miss. You're going to decide you're going to do these benchmarks now, and then 6 months from now, I say, man, I really wish I had also looked at this and I forgot. Lesson learned, write it down. So the next time you can say, oh, I want to add that into my benchmarking. If you're not keeping a good record of your daily life, so to speak, if you're not keeping track forensically of all the things that you are doing and what decision processes went into that, you're losing a golden opportunity to learn from your own education that you've done things for. I would love to say I remember I learned all the lessons and kept all the lessons in my head as to things I learned from situations that I was faced with. The reality is that they didn't happen frequent enough for me to retain it long enough. I may have used it a few times until those circumstances no longer kept coming up. I don't run hotels anymore. I don't have that first person concern as to a front desk agent that didn't show up. A fact that I had 4 meetings as a GM that I couldn't go to because I had to sit down behind my front desk while I was waiting for somebody to be able to do what I needed to do to be able to get back to what I needed to do and whatever. I don't remember those lessons of balancing all the responsibilities as well. I remember the history of it. I remember some of the events around it. I remember the stories I remember about it, but I don't remember actually the solution protocols that I often created for those scenarios. The backup options for staffing and things like this, the mechanics of how I balanced out payrolls on hours and balanced out how to get the right people in the right mix. I don't remember those functionalities. That's a daily functionality that exists in a role that I no longer am in. I think all of us have histories like that we have things that we did well when we were doing them, got the t-shirt for it, don't necessarily think we can go back to it again. But fondly, we look back at the times that we were doing that stuff. So benchmarking has a lot to do with remembering. The fun part about benchmarking, and I can truly say this from first person, is the things that I recorded down. I was forever with a little notepad of stuff, and then eventually with a recorder, and eventually with a PDA, and eventually with a phone keeping track of notes. Was the fact that I can go back and smile at what I thought was so important, and it turned out that it never was. The fact that I can go back to what I was thinking and go, wow, was I just way off on that? Or wow, that was brilliant. I didn't know I was that smart back then or whatever. It's fun to be able to go back and see these things. Now, I'm speaking more of journaling and speaking more of keeping record of how you do things on a daily basis and the notes of what you do and so forth. But I'm also talking about benchmarking, because benchmarking is a part of that process. Doing benchmarking, not doing it so much that it detracts you from actually doing things, keeping record of what's being done more than actually getting what's done, needing to get done is a toxic thing to do as well. There's extremes to anything. But doing the benchmarking and keeping track of performances and keeping track of what it is that you're doing at any given time, especially with the uniqueness of it being in the beginning of a year, which closes not only a month, but a quarter and a year. It's a neat pivot point to say, snapshot, let's do all of this. And you'll find very quickly that you'll continue to add stuff to that list so that next year, when the opportunity arises for an annual snapshot, then that's the time to do it. I would recommend monthly snapshots, quarterly snapshots, whatever fits into your schedule. I wouldn't go much beyond that, because getting down into the 4-week data of a monthly snapshot, you do get month over month, which you begin to use. And that's a very strong, serious, consistent metric is month over month, period over period. It is also dangerous because ownerships and so forth think that forevermore their business every day should be better than the day before. And they don't ever take well the fact that their business ebbs and flows, and that they have to look at it like the stock market number. It goes up and down a lot, but when you look at the larger scale of it, it's going up and down as it's progressing upwards at most times. Most of my discussions with ownership about benchmarking was related to the fact that a number went down, or a value went down, or performance went down. And they felt that that was because of an inefficiency or a problem, when in fact it was just business cycle at that time. You just came off of a great spring break. This is the gap between it and summer launch. You're going to go down in business. And even though they could see historically year over year that trend always happened, and that this year is progressively going bigger than it was last year, they still criticize the downward performance for the time that they know is a downward performance. Most of my lively conversations with owners of like basically sit and be quiet and stop whining about stuff that, anyways, we're in those times where they felt that they should have performed like Facebook used to up until the beginning of last year, where every day was better than the day before. Now, some hotels have meteoric climbing of performance. We have clients that does out of the gate, shot and took off and kept on going, and they still haven't reached their full potential yet. And the expectation that they should be performing above themselves each day is a realistic expectation until it isn't. Benchmarking helps you with that, because benchmarking, by referring to times where you see business cycle change, you can refer back that this happened like this before. This happened like this at this time. That's where benchmarking has a high value to it. So, beating you up about benchmarking, given the fact that it's the beginning of the year and everybody has a pile of stuff to do, and I'm taking your precious time early on a Friday morning to end the first week of the year, I do not want to go over and stretch it much farther than that. And I did want to just keep persistent with the idea that benchmarking is a very valuable thing to consider and implement, especially with the fact we're doing the live show right now. It should be the first week of January. Let's take a time and benchmark all these events that are going on. The list of events that we have are in the podcast last week, but also in this week, the live show, I'll put the bullet points as to the points that you should want to benchmark: your website's technology, your website's performance, your marketing channels, your comp set, evaluation of your comp set, performance of your comp set, pros and negatives of your comp set, pros and negatives of you against your comp set. Those are fundamentally the easiest ones. And then from there, you can expand more from that as well. Channel contributions, percentage of cost of contribution, diminished value of return. There's lots of them that you can throw in there. But it's great place to start is now, beginning of January of this year. So for everyone that watches us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter, thank you so very much for your continued support, continued viewership. For everyone watches us on TV, on Roku, Google, Amazon, and Apple, the Hospitality Channel, thank you so much for watching my smiley, happy face with those snorty noises in the background on your TV. For those that do not know, we do have a TV channel, Hospitality Channel. You can find it on your smart TV, Roku, Google TV, Apple TV, Amazon TV, or Kindle, Fire Stick, whatever you want to call it. Just simply for the Hospitality Channel. The live show is always on the free side of this. We have a payment gateway for it. We have other content behind it. It's $4.99 a month. We have a lot of fun content about strictly hospitality. This isn't a commercial place where we try to sell, places to eat or hotels to stay in. This is about our industry, learning about better ways of doing our stuff in our industry, learning about how to do things in our industry. That's what the TV channel is about. It's a lot of fun. We also have a Hospitality Marketing Club, hospitalitymarketing.club to be exact. If you go there, there's just a little email box. Put your email in. I send you a quiz. If you score 9 out of 10, which is there's 10 questions, you score 9 of them correctly, then I'll send you an invite to our exclusive club. It's not a basic club. It's a journeyman and an experienced and advanced hospitality marketers club. A chance for, if you have questions that are, you have a peer relationship that you can ask intelligent questions with other people that are also in the space and learn from each other. It's not to learn hospitality marketing from, although you learn it, but you're doing this. It's not basic level to learn hospitality marketing. Those are tons of stuff out there. A lot of it not good, but there's a lot of them out there that will teach you the basics of it. They'll tell you what the definition of PPC is and CPC and all the other stuff. They'll give you the basics, but they don't tell you how to do it. Well, we actually have a club that we talk about how to do it better than you may already be doing it. So if you're interested in that, check it out. It also gives you free access to the TV channel as part of the inclusion to the membership group. You get free access to the content on the TV channel. So look for it at hospitalitymarketing.club. So for all of that, my name is Loren Gray. I thank you for the privilege of your time. Wishing you a very happy New Year, and looking forward to talking to you next Friday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern U.S. time for show number 388. Until then, have a great and wonderful day and weekend.